Hello, hello. Welcome to another edition of our program, Demystifying Academic Research. After the last edition that we discussed about what makes a writing scholarly, I received a couple of questions from friends and from some students asking me, Prof, reflect, help give us idea, demystify the idea of a research gap and perhaps the types of research gaps and how we can find a research gap. In this short video, I intend to do the first two, to define what's a research gap and also give us the various types. In subsequent edition, we will discuss how we can actually find them. Simply put, a research gap is an area in research or in studies that have inadequate publications. Few things have been written about that area. Again, my name is Michael Booker, an international scholar and preacher. There are various types of research gap, but I intend to focus on the major 8 forms. Let me quickly say that myself, when I began doctoral studies, you may be interested to know that I failed my first course on research skills, which covers research gap, because I only knew about the research literature area so well. The other areas I have not mastered it, and so it caused me to fail my course. And I feel that it's important for me to also respond to this question so that others who may find themselves in similar situation can easily handle the issue of research gap. We have the types of research gap go as follows. Remember, I said there are 8 that I want to talk about. The methodological gap, the social location gap, the population gap, the conceptual gap, the disagreement gap, the time gap, the contextual and the contextual gap. Methodological gap. Once you want to write a thesis and you think that one of the reasons for you to come up with write about this topic is because of methodology, you may argue that existing studies may have taken the methodology of qualitative approach, whereas you want to follow quantitative approach. You may equally argue that existing studies may have done qualitative, quantitative, but you want to follow a mixed approach, mixed methodology, where you mix both the qualitative and the quantitative. Secondly, literature gap. You may argue that existing literature do not actually touch well on the ideas that you want to share about. They may have focused on particular ideas and left the idea you want to share untouched or inadequate touch of it. The third one is a social location. Social location gap. You may want to argue that most studies have focused on the poor or on the rich, maybe on the wealthy or on the weak, or perhaps things like that, social location or migrants or local people. That can be an argument. You want to take a different direction. The fourth is population gap. You may say that the population gap is a problem. Existing studies may have followed the idea of particular population. Perhaps they focus on adults and forgot about youths or adolescents or children. And in your research, you intend to look at this area that has been abandoned, maybe the children or the adult or the youths. The next one is the conceptual gap. You may argue that existing studies may have followed theory and abandoned practice, or they may have followed practice and abandoned theory. And you can also equally argue that you want to have a mix of them, both theory and practice. The next one is a disagreement gap. You may argue that existing studies disagree. This is so common even in the medical field. One school of thought says that, for instance, breast milk is better for the child. Another school of thought says that no, it's better to give artificial milk to the child. And so you say in this disagreement, you want to research on it to find out a solution and maybe an agreement. The next one is a time gap. You may want to write a thesis and you argue that existing studies have become obsolete. In fact, in any area where studies have stayed for more than a year without a new publication, it's becoming obsolete. For instance, like people come in my own area where we might say in Gi, there are few publications. But thank God for every actual man who has written about the fragments of Gi culture. So we can say there are current studies on Gi culture. What about the issue of contextual gap? In the contextual gap, you may quickly argue that particular contexts have a lot of publications. Perhaps people have written about the Western world, or the developing world, or about Africa, or about Europe, or about America, and you feel that it is high time for you to look at maybe the Indians, those that have been abandoned, the area that have been looked, they are not focused on. Or for instance, if you come from Cameroon, you may say many studies come from the French-speaking part of Cameroon, whereas the English part seems to be abandoned in terms of studies. Or you may argue that the English part have more studies and the French part has less studies. Or you want to make a mix of it. It all gives you reason to argue. We just said that there are the research gap is, as a summary, research gap is where there is inadequate research in a particular field of study. And there are 8 reasons, 8 types of research gap. We talk about the methodological gap, the literature gap, the social location gap, the population gap, the conceptual gap, the disagreement gap, the time gap, and the contextual gap. That is the end for this on this particular video. In our next video, we are going to look at how do you actually find this research gap. Where can you have information about the research gap? Just to quickly give us a tip of the iceberg. Most times you go to the recommendations of previous theses and you see what people have researched and they recommend what people can do for further research. That is that for now. The next time you can have more about how to find out the research gap. Thank you, and hope this will help you to bless you and bless somebody. Please recommend these videos or this YouTube channel for others that they may benefit, those who are interested in academic research, because here we demystify academic research. We make academic research become simple. But let me quickly have a disclaimer. It is not meant, this video is not meant to exhaust you on the topic. It's just a teaser, just an way to encourage you to go more, not to replace your private studies. So please focus on your professors, focus on your teachers. You may still contact us one-on-one or through Zoom, and we can see where we can be of help to you. Wish you the best in your studies and your research.